Nobody wants to hear that. It just doesn't feel right. I don't need him. It's like if I go out with a woman and say, I don't need a woman. And she's going to think, well, I'm a woman, right? Who wants to hear that?
Thank you so much for joining us again on Second Act TV. Once again, I want to welcome back Robert Manni, the author of The Guy's Guide to Love and host of Guys Radio and TV right here on YouTube. Robert, thanks for joining me again.
Thanks for having me back, Silka.
Robert, I think we have a fun topic today, is that things that a woman should never say to a man. We've talked, a couple of different ways about this, but these are definitely worth mentioning. Here's the first one. You're too good looking to be single. What's wrong with you? What's wrong with that, Robert? Why should we not say that?
Well, if you're single of a certain age, and I was single for a long time, as I've mentioned in the past, and I got a lot of questions about why are you still single? Usually came across just like that. No imagination behind it. Why are you still single? Nobody said to me, you're too good looking to be single. I wouldn't have minded that as much, but there is an implication is there something wrong with you? They're trying to figure out, like, this guy seems pretty cool, but there must be something wrong that he's still single. Well, maybe, and I would say I haven't met the right woman. That was always my response. And I've had relationships, but it hasn't felt right. End of story. So I don't know. Everybody's got their own story and their own way of handling that question. But I think the direct route on that is probably the best way to do it. Like, just say, why am I still single? And it'll reveal a lot about you. It'll be like a really good thing or maybe not a good thing. And then nobody has to waste any more time.
People, yeah, we want, if somebody's been single for a long time or has never been married, as in your case, and Trevor and Robbie, they met after 50, sure, that people do wonder about it. We've done segments on that. Sure. Is it a red flag or not? And so you want to know, maybe, but like a better way to say it is, as it's written here, you seem like a really interesting guy. I'm surprised you're still single, and not implying there's anything wrong. So as you just said, you could get to that information, which is valid. It's valid on different levels. But yeah, why are you still single? And women hate to be asked that as well.
A woman's never been married. Of course, they never want to be asked that. And then if they have, you wouldn't ask somebody, well, why have you been divorced twice? And that can happen. So it's like, we have to stop judging each other. It's curiosity. Like, okay, a guy's an available, attractive, intelligent guy who has something going for him. Why is he still single? Well, that's why.
Yeah, it's a never-ending conversation. I just had that one with Trevor as well, and I'll link to it. Here's another one. How would you say that? Okay, God, you remind me of my ex-husband. Even if you mean it kindly, nobody wants to be compared to somebody's ex and bring that drama in right away, do they? You remind me of my ex-husband.
No, I mean, you can say you remind me of somebody, and then you're going to get asked who, but you don't want to bring in exes, because guys, I don't think, ever want to be compared to an ex, because they're like, who was this guy? And he was sleeping with my current girlfriend. What was that all about? I don't want to think about that. So this never helps to bring it in the ex.
Yeah, they say here, you have familiar energy. I feel like I've known you forever. I don't quite get the purpose of this. I mean, and these things come up because this is based on surveys and feedback on the internet as one of the top things not to say. And it just surprised me it was there. But yeah, don't tell anybody you remind them of their ex. That goes both ways too. Here's another one that comes up a lot. Well, I don't need a man. Yeah, independence is great, but why are you here on the date?
Exactly. Like, what am I supposed to do with that? If I'm a guy, I don't need a man. Okay. Well, I guess I'm honored that you're with me because you don't need a man, and you're here because you want to be with me. So that is a good thing. So if you break it all down, it does make sense, but nobody wants to hear that. It just doesn't feel right. I don't need him. It's like if I go out with a woman and say, I don't need a woman. And she's going to think, well, I'm a woman, right? Who wants to hear that?
Yeah, apparently this comes up a lot. And, again, I want our guys to comment on this, and our women. Have you said that? Because there is, well, again, women of our generation, we have had to prove ourselves. And we are often accused of just wanting a guy, to take care of us. And maybe in the dating process, if you've heard that long enough, it's like, well, I don't need a guy. But it's all about in the way it's said.
Yeah. It just doesn't feel right. Like, what are
Mhm.
you going to, how is that going to grow the relationship?
Yeah, I agree. It said here, I've built a great life on my own, but I miss sharing it with someone special. That's nice,
Yeah.
just use your
Mhm.
own words. Oh, that this is horrible. And again, I want to ask our viewers, have you heard this a lot, or have you actually asked it? How much money do you make? Would you really ask that? I mean, I ask you.
People ask. That happens. And, then you determine what's driving that. And then you have to go from there. And it depends on how much money if you're making a heck of a lot of money and somebody asks you that, it's like a real curiosity. But if it's just a qualifier, then it seems a little bit intrusive.
Well, the way I was raised, German, I mean, this is something, I mean, my mother didn't know how much my father made, 40 years into the marriage. This is just something you do not do. It is, to me, it's insult. I remember I had one person ask me just recently, it wasn't a date situation. Well, how much do you make on the YouTube? It's like, it's none of your business. Why would you ask that? So if that ever comes up, to me, that's a red flag. Again, why do you want to know? And if it's about whether or not he can handle his retirement, or
Right.
whatever, what his credit rating is. I think we had that once. What's your credit score? There's other ways of getting to that, and certainly on the first date, or it's not really your business, I don't think. Here's another one. Again, how this came up. You must be dating much younger women, huh? Is that meant as a compliment? You must be dating much younger women.
I don't know because where is that coming from? I would respond to that. Why do you say that? And if it's
Yeah.
meant as a compliment because you're a really cool guy and you have young energy, and like I could see a lot of younger women really being turned on by a guy who has the experience yet has the energy, then it's like, oh, okay. Yeah, I am dating a lot of younger women, or not, but it comes across as more of a compliment than as a weird thing to say.
When I read this, I had the same thought that you did. How would this come up? But I remember on several dates, my early dates after 50, wondering if this guy dates a lot of younger women, because they were, real athletic, real good looking, blah, blah, blah. But I certainly wouldn't ask that.
What are you going to gain from that, Silk? It's like,
Right.
so if that's the case, that's the case. They're dating you right now, so give yourself a pat on the back and say, hey, I can keep up with those young lassies.
Well, I would think that would put somebody in, just on the defense right away. Because
Right.
if an older woman asks or says something like that, now you have to defend yourself. That I don't know. It's just, I
Tough.
think
Yep.
that's a really stupid thing to say. Even if you're thinking it, don't let it slip out of your mouth. Here's another one that's actually trending, what we hear about now, that all men over 50 are emotionally unavailable. Again, how does that come up? But do you really want to tell a man that, oh yeah, all men are emotionally unavailable?
Well, yeah, if you're dating a guy, if it's a new guy, and you say something like that, that means the implication is that he's emotionally unavailable.
Mhm.
So that's not a positive thing to say. And then you're basically saying, well, I'm dating you right now, and I know you're emotionally unavailable. So what does that say about me? So that's a lose-lose.
The whole topic of emotionally available, I'm kind of actually getting sick of reading that, but apparently it's like hot it's all going around the internet, emotional availability and men. So I don't know, maybe we'll look into that a little deeper.
Also, it's like, what exactly does that mean? You want somebody who's open and willing to share their quote unquote feelings, but you don't want to have to pull stuff out of, if, when somebody has something to say and they want to talk about their feelings, they want to talk about their feelings, but you can kind of like drag it out of
Yeah.
them a little bit. But, as long as the guy's treating you good and he's not closed off, he's
Mhm.
sharing when, it's comfortable for you and for him. That's probably a good thing.
Yeah.
Men aren't as emotionally available or open, if you
Mhm.
will, as women are. And for various reasons across lots of different categories. Like women will get together, and correct me if I'm wrong, like in Sex and the City, or whatever. You have four ladies having drinks talking about men in very graphic terms. And guys, when they get together, they don't do that. Grown men, they don't talk about their sexual exploits.
That's interesting that you say that because women think men do that, that they brag about their, that maybe that's just younger men.
Younger, yeah, if they're like, yeah, younger and not that mature. But once
Not
you're
that
kind of
mature.
happening, there's no reason to be crowing to your friends about, hey, I got, whatever, because it's like, what,
It's
just shut up.
yeah, yeah, it's really, really immature. No, I agree. Here, another one that's just terrible. Do you still perform? No matter how you ask that, do you really want to ask that early on?
Yeah, I don't, if that's not a question that the words, this is about showing versus telling. So find out if you're interested, find out if everything's still working. And if you tell the guy you want to make sure that the relationship, you want to have an intimate relationship, he'll know that what that means. And if he's just not into that, I guess he'll say something about that. But if you're curious about that and it's important to you, which is fine, yeah, find out. But don't say, "Do you still perform?" You might want to
Mm-hmm.
say, "I'm interested in having an intimacy is an important part of a relationship."
Mm-hmm.
What are your thoughts about that?
I agree. Something like that. Because I have gotten several, I won't say numerous, but several questions about, how do I, how do I find out? How do we find out before we spend a bunch of, time with someone and then find out that we're not sexually compatible or that he doesn't even want to have sex or he has, erectile dysfunction or whatever. And I didn't have a good answer for that. I don't know. I mean, I guess the only way is to ask, but I think you ruin more things or make it more uncomfortable than perhaps it already is. So I don't know. Maybe if anybody out there has a suggestion, put it down because yeah, I get why you would want to know, but I don't get how you would ask
And
without.
people respond differently to different people also. So it's got to be, there's a chemistry aspect to it also. I mean, it's rare that you're going to find somebody that has no interest, like a guy that's not interested in sex. Maybe it could happen for sure, but
Yeah.
why is he dating? I mean, not that dating's just about sex, but it's usually included in the package from a male's perspective.
Well, and as we get older, there's the companionship thing, but
Sure.
that does have to be defined. And that becomes what I'm hearing also more and more of an issue as we age is that you're looking for a companion, maybe not, and you definitely have to be on the same page if that's the
Right.
deal. So I don't know, maybe you can come up with a better way to start that conversation. Again, if you do, leave us your comments. Here's an interesting one. I'm not doing this online dating thing much longer, implicating that, I mean, you're burnt out, frustrated, that you're just, it's very negative. I'm not doing this much longer.
Why even bother saying that? You can make
Right.
that determination, but you're with somebody right now. Now, was that an online dating connection? If it was, maybe they're going to think like, oh, because you met me or whatever. That could be taken a lot of different ways. Or they don't want to come across as like I've been on like online dating. I can't meet somebody, so I keep online dating. It depends on where it's coming from. I think where that statement, what's the inspiration for saying that?
Right, right. I know that a lot of people wonder how long have you been online dating or how
Right.
long, and because the history of that does give you some information about where the person is in wanting a relationship. Like if this is your first online date, okay, don't put too much, don't put too
Right.
much on there. I mean, it can happen, but it's not likely. So in that sense, I get it. But to say, well, I'm not doing this much longer, that implies that you, as you said, you're not good at it, and it's a bit of a desperate thing to say. Oh, and here, this one here, finally, my kids or grandkids always come first. They're just the most important thing in my life.
Well, it might be true, but I don't know if you say that unless that you feel like you really have to set up those the guidelines there. But it also, if you're on the receiving end of that, you're always thinking, well, if I'm your partner, if I could be your companion, like I'm always going to be kind of second, and we're too old to have kids or whatever. So, don't your kids have their own lives and all that? How do they view their children? Of course they want to be very close to them, but you have to have room for your companion, a new person in your life, and nobody wants to feel like they're second string.
Right. Yeah, I think that becomes a huge issue. Again, we have done videos on that too, dating with adult children and women and men for that matter, who, the minute the kids call, and the kids being adult children, at this point, that everything drops. So you have to be there for them. And yeah, it's a nice thing, I suppose, depending on what it is. In a lot of cases, especially when divorce is involved, there's guilt involved, you overdo it. There have to be some boundaries. And saying this on a first date, to me, that would be and we're not talking about what turns women off now, but that would be an immediate turn off. That's okay. Well, go play with your grandkids. Good luck.
I'll go out with younger women.
Yeah. I know it's not a good thing to say. I mean, again, like you said, that might be true, but saying that is a turn off to whoever you're saying it to, because you are saying you'll never be a priority.
Right. And it's not a slight about people, all the people out there who are over 50 have kids, and the kids are very important. Of course. Of course. This is about, you don't want to marginalize a new potential partner before you even get started.
Absolutely. Well, Robert, there's lots of other stuff here we could talk about. Like I said, there's lots of stuff a woman shouldn't say to a man, as well as men shouldn't say to women. Maybe we'll talk about that on another episode. In the meantime, anything you want to add here on this topic?
I just think we all have to be, think before we speak sometimes. And if we want to get to a point of information from somebody, think about the nicest way to surface the topic and get the information you want to get out, and not make them feel bad or put on the spot or be put in a defensive situation. And it's just about being mindful and conscious and kind. I think that's something that we men and women need to be mindful of when they're meeting somebody new and they want to ferret out, get all that information out there.
Yeah, it's a nice way to put it. You need a filter. I think a lot of these, if you had a filter, they might not have slipped out. And again, I found these because they prop up as prevalent. So interesting conversation. Robert, thank you. Always enjoy my time with you. As always, I will link to all of your information to your radio show on UK Health Radio, Guys Radio, as well as Guys TV right here on YouTube. Tune in and subscribe and pick up the book, The Guys Guide to Love. Robert, thank you. I look forward to our next conversation on Second Act TV.
Thank you, Silka. Thanks, everybody.